welcome back. I'm here with Jason Coleman with AmpliFI Real Estate. Jason, how you doing, buddy?
Hey, doing well, man. Thanks for having me.
Yes, sir. So today, what we want to talk about is investing in real estate, and specifically real estate agents investing in what they do best. And Jason does a really, really good job of this. Jason's come into the business. He's a real estate agent in our market here, and he really focuses on the investment side. So can you tell us a little bit about what you do, Jason?
Yeah, long story short, I consider myself an investor first. I started investing in real estate before I got my license, and when I got my license, I actually thought I was going to kind of get blown away by other agents that are also investing in real estate. And something that has blown my mind since the day one as an agent is, like, most agents don't invest in real estate when, like you said before, that's what you know, a lot of agents are passionate about real estate, but they don't invest themselves. And I just think being a real estate investor is not only helping yourself, your family, but it's also helping your clients. Like, the education that you get by just being an investor, your first deal, your second deal, 100th deal, whatever it is, you're learning on the go, and you're able to represent your clients better because of the experience that you've built for yourself. So
So we were talking before, like, the importance of why a real estate agent would want to put, some of their investment money, possibly all of it. I'm not a financial advisor by any stretch, so you don't follow that for financial advice. But why you would want to put majority of your money into this? And we were talking about, a real estate agent's typically going to have big hits, right? But this allows you, especially if you're focused on the long-term hold piece, it allows you to see that monthly income generated.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I'm not a financial advisor either, but we invest the majority of our investments are now in real estate. It used to be just, simple low-cost index fund, which I think is a great strategy for pretty much everybody. But if you're an agent, you have a tremendous opportunity in front of you to buy real estate, really at a discount. Mm-hmm. And what I typically do on every listing appointment, unless it's some luxury listing or something that's, like, just really nice, it's not going to be a good rental or Airbnb or whatever it is, I typically give 3 options. I say, look, here's my cash offer. If you're looking for something closing in a couple weeks, you want to be out of it, no showings, no inspections, no whatever. Here's my cash offer. Here's what I think this house will list and sell for. I'll put it in writing saying, hey, if I ask for a price reduction, I will sell my side for free, right? Or we can do some sort of seller financing, creative financing, if they're looking for that cash flow instead of just a lump sum selling their house or their property. So it's just, I really think agents that don't do this, or at least incorporate a small portion of this into their business, it's a missed opportunity, especially in this new market where everything was fantastic for years with COVID money and low interest rates. It didn't take much to sell houses. Well, now that's kind of caught up to us, and if you haven't been investing in the meantime and your business has been cut in half or even less than that, if you were investing like we were, we at least have that passive income just constantly coming in. So yeah, I'm crazy about it. I mean, and if you're an agent and you're not doing that, I just think add that to your portfolio, to your repertoire.
Yeah, so we talked a little bit on a video series that we did, an investor video series that we did, and you didn't so you came from a point where you were kind of forced to get into this, and didn't have a whole lot of money at that point in time. So tell us about that piece. Give us that little piece of your story of how you got involved in real estate and then into the investment piece.
Yeah, long story short, I got fired from a job that I just worked my tail off, and it was a job I thought I was invincible. I thought I was a career position. I was there for 6+ years. It was a startup, like, great. I was in a healthcare gig previous to this, long story short, and it was something that I really thought, like, that this is it. This is my next 20 years, 30 years, and the rug got pulled out from underneath of me. That was at the time, it was an end of the world situation. What am I going to do? Like, my wife and I, luckily, we had just bought our first house, and luckily we were living below our means. We didn't have a bunch of debt or anything like that. we didn't have the new cars and taking trips all the time on credit card debt or whatever. We were already savvy with our money for the most part, and then the rug got pulled out from underneath of us. And I realized then that the secure job that I thought that I had was not secure, and what are the chances that the next job I take are secure? So I told my wife, this is now 6 years ago, but I said, look, I need 5 years. I started listening to real estate podcasts. Bigger Pockets was a big one. Read all the books, of course, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. A lot of people know that book. That's a game-changing book. If you just read that book, it just kind of changes your mindset on money. And really got into the weeds on real estate. And I told my wife, I need 5 years. Stuff's going to be a little weird. We're gonna hit real estate head first. We're going to move around a little bit, but I'm going to get this real estate thing figured out. And in 5 years, nobody's going to have that paycheck over top our heads, right? We're not going to have to worry about it. And we're going to be in a different situation than we are now. And if I were to lose a position in 5 years, it's just not going to be a dire situation, right? So that's when we turned our first house into a rental and took the plunge on that, became accidental landlords, if you will, and took the plunge, bought our next property. A year later, moved out of that, turned it into a rental, actually ended up flipping a house in Wilmington. We moved to Wilmington for like a quick W-2 job to kind of make ends meet while I was building up the real estate side. I got my license really as a side business to save 3% on the commissions that I was buying for flips or rentals or whatever, not really thinking I'm going to be an agent. Ended up really enjoying it, and I found that there really aren't a lot of investor agents out there, where most agents will tell you, I deal with a lot of retail agents that are like, man, I hate dealing with investors. They'll run you ragged, blah, blah, blah. Well, the real investors won't. You just kind of have to figure out how that works. Like 80% of my business, my agent business, are investors. So I say this pretty often to retail agents. Like most retail agents are chasing after that house where that one person sells every 5, 7, 10 years. An investor, we're buying and selling houses all the time. Mm-hmm. And if you are that person that found that investor the house, like you're in their bank account every single month. It's like automatic referral business. Like Jason found me a great deal. Every single month the money's flowing in, or there's free equity or whatever. I'm going to be the guy that they refer to if one of their friends or family members is selling a retail house or another investment property. And what ended up happening is like that organic growth of, it wasn't organic at first. I did a ton of door knocking to kind of build that business at the beginning, just kind of get my reps in, figure out how to really be an agent from the ground up. And then it just turned into an investor-focused business and shopping for investment properties, for both personal, for our portfolio, for acquisitions, and then the vast majority of them we can't acquire ourselves. We just, we hand them off to other clients. Mm-hmm. So,
you mentioned that you do a lot of owner financing. So how do you find those? How do you find those deals? Where do you find people that go, hey, I want to sell you my house, and oh, by the way, I'm going to hold the loan on it?
Yeah, seller financing. So this is how we've built the majority of our portfolio. I believe like at this point, 22 of our 29 properties have been acquired through seller financing. It's just been an incredible opportunity. And again, I was reading the books, listening to the podcast, thinking, who are these people that are letting you just seller finance, no money down, 5% down? And I really thought it was like a bunch of, I just didn't think it was real, right? You hear all these stories and I'm like, that's not possible. Nobody's going to let me do that. Well, again, get your reps in. Not every deal is for seller financing. You're not going to find, you can't force a seller to finance a deal. But what I have done time and time again, and this typically works well with portfolio sellers, where I will sell a portion of their portfolio on market. I will sell, call it a third. I'll sell the second third of the portfolio off market, direct to buyer. They'll pay the buyer side of the commission. And what I'll do to save them on taxes, because they just sold a bunch of properties in 1 year, I will seller finance that last third. I'll buy it directly from them. We'll work out the terms, we'll work out the down payment, the amortization schedule, the balloon payment, interest rate. All of that stuff is flexible depending on the deal. And it just, it started with one property where a guy had 6 properties and I ended up buying 2 directly from him, but 1 was seller financing. And I just my eyes opened up a little bit of whoa, you can do this. And then it turned into another one, and finally turned into a large portfolio deal that we were able to acquire with no money down. And that's when the big light bulb went off of being an agent. I say this pretty regularly, like I consider being an agent a wealth creation superpower. Like if you do this right, you can acquire real estate, work in your client's best interest. You'd be surprised how many people will choose the seller finance option or choose the cash option. I mean, Lissy and I just did my wife and I just did one of our best flips to date. Our best BRRRR deal to date. We're going to keep it as a rental, and we got it from another agent. They knew how much it was. They didn't want to sell it on the market. We bought it off market, and I just get it a lot where people ask, why would somebody do this? And you just have to find the right seller that, for seller financing, it's typically a 60, 70, 80-year-old person has been investing in real estate, that own the properties outright. They already have enough money in the bank. They're just looking for that monthly cash flow, right? Without the headaches, without the repairs, without the tenant stuff, without evictions, without anything like that. You show up and you say, look, I'm able to give you a market price without you having to pay commissions, and we can work out the deal where it's mutually beneficial. You save on taxes, you don't have the headaches, you don't have the showings, the inspections, whatever. I'm able to acquire a deal with less money down, and most of the time, no money down, so I can keep my reserves high. Something happens after the transaction or after we close, I'm not worried about investing into the property because I was able to save some cash, and it just ends up working out. Like if you do seller financing correctly, it really is a mutually beneficial deal. So I'm crazy about it, and I talk about it pretty often. So
Yeah. So you'll hear people say, and I've heard people say, "Oh, you're taking advantage of people. You're taking advantage of people. You're taking advantage." You mentioned even like kind of like the older investor with a portfolio. You're taking advantage of this guy, but it really has to be a win-win situation. You're not taking advantage of this person. There is a reason that this person would want to seller finance to you. Not everybody's going to be in that situation, and
not even close.
And let's be honest. I mean, you can't even do seller financing if you've already got a loan encumbered on the property. So I mean, it's got to be stuff that's free and clear
For the most part, yeah.
So I'm a brand new agent, okay, and I'm listening to this podcast for the first time, and you have inspired me, Jason. What do I do first? How do I get started investing in real estate?
Again, this is like a fail forward approach. Like you really have to get your reps in. I say that a lot, where you're going to have to be told no 100 times. I mean, I was door knocking 4 days a week, 3 hours a day, getting told no all the time, building up both my retail agent experience, but also my investment experience, where you just have to end up finding enough people. And if you're brand new, there's somebody already in your phone that owns a house, that they own it outright, and sometimes the house is just sitting there vacant, right? Or they're a real estate investor, they own the house outright, and they haven't bumped up the rent in 10 years, okay? You can show up, and I've done this time and time again. I can show up to somebody and say, look, your house is vacant. Why don't you just make money off of it? I'll give you close to market rent or market price. If not, I can do over market price with the right terms. And I'll fix up the property, or sometimes they're vacant just because they just haven't put a tenant back in there, and you can let it cash flow day one. Stop just sitting on that vacant property. Let me pay you for it, right? At least month to month. And if there's a tenant in the property, I find this so often, where they haven't bumped up the rent forever. And we just bought another one in January this past year, where the tenant was paying $725 a month in rent. I turned around and said, look, well, market rent's $1,100, $1,200 day one, without even me doing much to the property at all. How about I pay you $750 a month, and you never have to worry about this property again? Yes. Where do I sign? Right? That's typically what happens, because some investors at that point in the game, when they own the property outright, they don't see this need. They think, yeah, well, I'm helping the tenant out, I'm not bumping up the rents. Well, your repairs start to get more expensive, your taxes, your insurance start to get more expensive. I'm like, this is not only going to go so long, where if she kept letting the tenant pay $725 a month in rent, that property would have gone into disrepair, and then the tenant would have had to leave anyway. It would have been sold, the tenant would have been, evicted, or whatever the situation is. So like, you really are showing up with an opportunity to say, why don't you make more money with no headaches whatsoever. And like I said before, it really, it has to be a mutually beneficial deal. It's a partnership unlike any other lending situation. If you get a loan from Bank of America or wherever, that's not really a partnership. They're giving you a loan. It's a paperwork transaction versus seller financing. You really become, it's way more personal. And they're not going to sell me a property that they know is not really going to operate. And they're not going to sell me some defective property that then they end up having to foreclose on me or whatever. It's a partnership. And really all of my seller lenders, but most of them they're really close to me now. Like it takes some time, you build rapport, and you just become that person that they show up to saying, hey, I'm selling this next deal. And it's just happened time and time again where then you become, I have enough references, seller lenders now to say, look, you can contact all of these seller lenders and I've never missed a payment once. I do what I say I'm going to do. And if you're a newbie, it's just going to take more time. It's just going to take more no's for you to get to that yes, right? And don't force seller financing to somebody else because it's just not going to work. You have to come up with a situation where it's like, yeah, this makes sense. Let's do it. Sometimes I get in contact with their CPA to say, look, what is going to net them more money? What kind of terms are like actually in their best interest? And let's get the deal done.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and another thing you hit on, the foreclosure piece. I mean, coming from the other side of the transaction, there's risk there, but there's little risk. And the risk is mitigated by, hey, I'm going to seller finance to you, Jason, but if you quit paying, I get to take the house back.
And it's typically in better condition.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it makes sense to do this a lot of times. I want to hit on one other thing too, because you mentioned something else. I think real estate agents, just people in general that aren't really in the investing game, think that there's really only that how you make money is you buy a property and it's rented. And really what happens is there's built-in ways to increase the value in this property. And a lot of times investors have either run out of the resources to be able to do what they need to do to the property. They haven't kept up with market rents, and when you take these when you purchase these properties, therein lies your ability to increase value right off the bat, increase rent right off the bat that allows you to continue to make money on those properties.
Yes. You just find these opportunities and then again, you just end up becoming that person that other investors go to say, I mean, I don't know how many times there's just other investors that have not bumped up the rents. And that's just such an easy transaction to say, look, I could sell your house for this, give them the options. Here's a cash offer. Does that, what does an extra $150,000 do to you? And most of the time they've been investing for 30 years. They're like, I'd rather have $1,000 a month or whatever than the cash and take a big tax hit on the cash if you gave them that offer, right? So like you show up, the numbers make sense if you just bump up to market rents. And now, yeah, you're not cash flowing as much as like putting 20% down, 25% down on the property, but you just saved on a $200,000 property. Most of the time I got to bring 20 to 25% down with a regular loan. That's $50,000 that I got to come up with just to buy the property for the down payment. If I buy it with no money down, yeah, I'm cash flowing a little bit less, but I get to save that $50,000 for repairs, for reserves, rehab, whatever. But I'm willing to cash flow a little bit more neutrally, not negative. I don't ever recommend buying negative cash flow deals, but you can really get to a point where the payment, the principal and interest stays the same pretty much permanently. I guess until your balloon payment, but by 5 years, 2, 3, 4 years down the road, the rents have increased. And everybody knows in the last few years they've increased substantially.
Right.
I don't think that's permanent by any means. We're seeing a stabilization right now, but I'm willing to take the chance that 5 years from now, rents will be higher than they are today, right? And as long as that property will pay for itself, cash flow neutral, I'm willing to buy that deal.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk about something else a little bit that you're passionate about, and that's financial education. And again, a lot of real estate agents out there, not that they're lacking in financial education, but there are things that they don't know. Okay, there are things out there that most everybody doesn't know, and it's just important to have that that piece, that financial literacy piece, that education, learning more and more around that. So I know you have a class that you do. Not everybody here on this podcast is from around here, so they wouldn't be able to go to it. But so where would you suggest someone starting to learn more about financial education, learning more about finances and how this stuff works? This way they can. We're taught to go from A to B. We're taught to get a job and invest in the stock market so we can retire at 65, right?
And then die.
Yeah. So where do you get this information that shows you other avenues?
Yeah, I want to take a step back or double down on what you said, where you said, well, not a lot of agents have that financial education. Well, really nobody does, right, in our society and really across the whole world, but especially in a consumerist society that we are here in America, which, again, that's what makes the world go round. I'm a capitalist 100%, but the reason people aren't financially educated, that's intentional, right? They do. They want us to work the same job or work a job for 30, 40 years, save the rule of thumb, save 5% of your income in the stock market or whatever, wherever your 401k, and then you realize that at 60, you don't have enough to retire, right? So the reason I'm so crazy about financial literacy is because I realized very early on, when I was working full-time, going to school full-time, if there's, instead of going out and buying the cars and the clothes and the car payment or whatever, started thinking, well, where do I put this extra $50 a month? Where do I put this extra $100 a month? And there are just unlimited resources, right? When people say, I just don't know where to get started, I get that. I get it can be overwhelming and you don't know where to get started. But I also think there is a lack of ownership in our culture, right? Where you can just say, well, I don't know, or I wasn't taught about money. Like, my parents didn't teach me anything about money, right? I didn't know, just like everybody else, just like the vast majority of Americans, nobody is teaching you about money. So, but luckily, we live in an age where you have the internet, you have I'm crazy about podcasts. I'm a podcast junkie, right? I mean, everything I learned about financial literacy early on, stocks, investing, real estate investing was really from podcasts. And you have unlimited free books as well if you're more of a bookworm, where you can go to the local library and learn at least the basics to get you started, to build up just enough confidence to get started, right? I remember putting $20, $50 into the stock market and freaking out when it went down 5%, 10%, 15%. I remember being anxious, sweating, even with staying, it seems crazy now, but I remember staying up at night when I ended up having $1,500 in an account, in a stock account, where I'm oh my gosh, and watching the swings up and down or whatever. But you realize that over time, typically the stock market goes up and to the right? You invest, live below your means, and invest the rest. And I started with, there's a few podcasts that I started with. The Motley Fool podcast I love. Those are great with financial literacy, just baseline education, and even some more in-depth, complex really strategies. Choose FI is another one. So I'm crazy about financial independence. I named my company AmpliFI at the FI is for financial independence. I'm crazy about that community, just over investing in both yourself and your overall portfolio, your investment stuff, whether it's stocks or real estate, to a point where you can retire early, right? I think so many people just do this rule of thumb of I've met so many people that are putting the 5% into an account, but they don't understand that 5% is just sitting into a cash account in their 401k. And they've been doing that for years, missing out on the gains that the stock market has given, the real estate, whatever. And that goes back to the ownership side. If you're just going to let a financial advisor do your thing, or somebody that doesn't really know what they're doing comes into your work and says, oh, just put it in the 401k, and you just kind of try to set it and forget it without really knowing how these accounts work, how the retirement plan's set up, it's just happened so many times where you're either going to get burned, somebody's going to take advantage of you, right? I have an entire presentation on how, in my opinion, 80-90% of financial advisors are just straight up crooks. And I don't even hate to say that anymore. They don't have a fiduciary. It's not like being a real estate agent. We're fiduciary to our clients. We have to legally work in their best interest Financial advisors don't have to do that, right? They make money off of fees, they make money off of commissions, whatever. And most people don't even, I sat down with a client the other day who just wanted to pick my brain on it. And we found out that his financial advisor was charging like 6%. And he was barely breaking even on his portfolio that he had the money with this guy for like 10 years. So it's such a, again, this is why financial education, and this is why I'm crazy about it, because once I started taking it seriously, where you start realizing how money moves and operates. You start realizing that each dollar is an investment. It's a soldier going out and working for you while you're sleeping. Like passive income, passive investing, you have to make your money work for you. You cannot work enough hours in the week, in the year, whatever, to just retire off of saving your money in a savings account, especially nowadays, which is why it's so important, why I have my meetup, because I don't make any money off of that. It's not a lead gen thing. It's not whatever. It is because I'm crazy, and I've seen the transformation in my own life by taking ownership of my finances. And people are just like, oh, I don't know anything about money. That mindset just destroys so many people, and you'll live in that mindset for 30 years before you realize, well, now you're 60 years old and you can't even make ends meet and stuff's getting more expensive. If I can help, which I already have, a portion of the population to get to a point that keeps their family more secure, themselves more secure in the short term and the long term, like, I've done my job. That is what I'm truly passionate about, and that's why I'm like, I used to be really weird. I don't know. I used to be really quiet about it. Now I'm like, anytime I can, I bring it up. Right.
And I want to give you a chance to plug that group for the people that are listening around here, because Jason does, he's giving this information away for free. Yeah. He wants to put this information in people's hands. So tell us about where you can meet them.
Yeah, so our AmpliFi Meetups are the first Tuesday of every month from 6:30 to 8 p.m. They are at College Hill Collective. It's actually a CrossFit gym that I'm a part of, and we meet at the second floor. That's the first Tuesday of every month. I also have Pints and Properties, which is a real estate investment specific meetup. So my AmpliFi Meetup is financial literacy. We talk about bare bones of finances, credit, debit, assets, liabilities, all of that, sometimes real estate. Pints and Properties is a real estate meetup where we meet on the last Wednesday of every month from 6 to 8 p.m. at Pig Pounder Brewing. If you need any more information about that, I'm happy to put my email is jason@investinthetriad.com. I'm not really a big social media junkie, but you can email me, text me. We're happy to get you set up on at least the email list. And again, it's free. Like it's free. Come join. You're not alone. Like so many people. I mean, I started having all these conversations with clients and whatnot, and they're just like, they just didn't have anywhere to turn. Like, where do I go? That's why I created these meetups, because you're not alone. You realize there are thousands of other people out there that just come in. They're like, they don't know how to use credit correctly, or ask what is an asset, what's a liability, like how much you're actually paying on your car payment, over time. Like all of those questions. It's a lot easier to talk about when everybody else in the room is going through the same thing, and they at least want to learn and take ownership of their finances. Mm-hmm. That's what I keep coming back to. Pretty much every meeting is, if you don't come from a wealthy family like me, I don't know, my parents are, I don't want to call them broke, but close enough, right? Where if you don't come from a wealthy family has to come from you. Like you have to want to take charge and take that ownership. And it really is, I know people say like it's harder than ever, but it really is easier than ever. I think all the time, like what my dad could have accomplished or my grandfather could have accomplished if he had podcasts, if he had the internet, if he had YouTube to learn how does the stock market work? What's a PE ratio? What do we choose? What stocks do we choose? What type of real estate investing? Like what is real estate investing? I keep going back to like every generation before us has actually had it worse, especially from an education standpoint. Now you can there's a million podcasts on anything. Yeah. Just get into the weeds and find a podcast that speaks to you. Hopefully legit, choose one of the top 10 or whatever, the ones that are legitimate, not the ones that are say, hey, pay me $50,000 and I'll teach you how to invest in real estate. Those are scams, right? So it's easier than ever to just learn, but it really comes with taking ownership of your finances and go from there.
Yeah. As y'all can see, Jason's very passionate about this, and we're going to get his information. We'll put them in the show notes below. But also, I wanted to mention we just did a video I mentioned earlier on our real estate investor series. We haven't really talked about the investor series on this podcast before, but we'll put a link to that in the show notes as well. But real estate investing is important, and it's very important for real estate agents. I've been in this business, my family's been in this business just about my whole life. And one of the issues in this business with agents is, how do I get out? And it's always been, I can't retire, I have to stay in this. And you don't see many real estate agents retire over time unless it's a health issue. This is a way you get out. So I want you guys to listen to this, put some things in place, and move forward, because this piece is really important to your business. Thank you guys, and we'll see you next time.